Have you ever felt like your whole life changed in a single moment? Like everything you believe about love, trust, and power suddenly flipped upside down? What if I told you that sometimes the most unbelievable fairy tales aren't the ones we read in books, but the ones that trap us, force us, and refuse to let go until they've reshaped who we are? You're here for a reason. You're curious. Maybe you saw the title, Fake Relationship with a Billionaire, and your mind started racing. You're wondering, is it scandalous, romantic, dark, sweet? Maybe a little bit of all that. But one thing I promise you, by the time we reach the end of this story, you will know the truth behind the fairy tale. You'll see how a single decision, signing a marriage contract with a stranger, can ignite a fire so wild, so real, it threatens to burn everything in its path. And trust me, it's not what you think. Let's get personal for a second. Have you ever had to pretend? Fake a smile? Fake confidence in front of someone who held all the power? Imagine faking an entire relationship with a man who could buy an island with loose change, but still looked at you like you were a problem he never wanted. That's the world Ava Marlowe is thrust into. She's not your average damsel. She's sharp, stubborn, and way too smart to fall in love with a man who's emotionally frozen. Yet here she is, walking down the aisle, signing her name on a billion-dollar contract, forced into a world where secrets rule and love is off limits. But here's the part that'll hook you, the part you came for. The question circling in your mind right now: why would a billionaire force a stranger into marriage? What's in it for him? And why her? Just a bookstore girl with debts, a sick father, and nothing to offer but her name. It's not random. Nothing in his world is random. Every move is calculated. Every word, a chess piece. And Ava? She's about to become part of a game she doesn't even know the rules to. And the worst part? The man holding the rule book, Damian Wolf, is as ruthless as he is beautiful. Let me paint a picture for you. Ava's world is all cracked windows, coffee-stained paperbacks, and the quiet kind of sadness that settles into your skin when dreams die slowly. She lives paycheck to paycheck, barely holding things together after her mom passed and her dad's medical bills started piling up. She's not looking for a Prince Charming. She's looking for survival. But life, in all its twisted humor, doesn't offer her a job or a lucky break. It hands her Damian Wolf, billionaire tech mogul, reclusive, arrogant, utterly magnetic, and completely uninterested in love. He doesn't believe in fairy tales. He believes in control. Now, imagine this. He needs a wife, not for love, not for companionship, but to fix something cold and legal, hidden deep in corporate paperwork and high society pressure. His reputation is on the line. His billion-dollar empire depends on appearances. And what better way to silence the vultures and to fake the perfect marriage? Quick, clean, forgettable. That was the plan. Until Ava said yes. Here's where it gets twisted. The moment she signs a contract, the rules shift. She's supposed to smile for the cameras, wear designer gowns, and play the role. But the moment she steps into Damian's world, into his penthouse, his schedule, his orbit, she realizes this isn't acting. It's survival. He's colder than winter steel, unapologetically cruel. The kind of man who kisses your cheek in public, but doesn't look at you twice behind closed doors. And still, something's not right. He watches her when she's not looking. He clenches his jaw when she laughs. He hates her, but not really. And that is exactly what makes you stay right here. Because you want to know, what is Damian hiding? Let's make a pact, you and I. You've given this video a few minutes of your time. But what you don't realize yet is, you're about to live this story. This isn't just about a fake relationship or a billionaire with secrets. This is about power plays, obsession, slow burn tension that turns enemies into lovers, and a truth so shocking that when it's revealed, you'll go back and rewatch every moment just to find the clues. And trust me, they're here. I've planted them carefully. So, ask yourself, what happens when a contract written in ink starts to rewrite a woman's soul? What happens when the lines blur, when pretending starts to feel too real, when the man who promised never to care starts to unravel right in front of her? Ava's about to find out that behind every diamond necklace and private jet is a lie. And sometimes, love doesn't save you. Sometimes, it destroys you. And now, just when you think you've got this story figured out, just when Ava starts to understand the man she's married to, the contract is found, missing a clause. one that changes everything. And that, my friend, is where the real game begins. Stay with me. You're going to want to see this unfold. Because what Ava does next, it's not in any fairy tale you've ever read. Before all of this, the glittering chaos, the contract signed under pressure, the mansion doors that now shut her in like a velvet cage, Ava Marlowe was simply trying to keep the lights on. She wasn't looking to marry anyone, let alone a billionaire with a reputation that made Wall Street hold its breath. She was focused on her ailing father, working double shifts at the used bookstore on West 14th and helping out part-time at the campus library just to scrape enough together for his meds. Her world was small but steady. She had no time for dating, no energy for love, and certainly no dreams left in her pocket. But then again, that's exactly when life tends to twist a knife, when you're not watching. A few months before the proposal that would change everything, Ava had a visitor at the bookstore, a woman in a navy power suit, sunglasses too dark for the cloudy day, and an attitude that didn't match the creaky shelves or discount bins. She claimed to be scouting local businesses for a donation drive, but her questions were odd, too personal, too focused on Ava's situation. Where was her family? Did she have any ties outside the city? Was she currently seeing anyone? Ava thought it was invasive at the time, even laughed it off. But looking back now, that visit had nothing to do with charity. That woman didn't even leave her name. And a week later, Ava got an anonymous envelope with no return address, just a time, a date, and a location. Some rooftop lounge uptown. She almost didn't go. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, pulled her there. That's where she first saw Damien Wolfe. And nothing's been the same since. Now here's the thing about Damien. The media paints him one way, but reality is another beast entirely. On paper, he's a visionary tech CEO with ruthless charm and a face made for magazine covers. But in person, there's something colder. Calculated. His words are curated, his silence is sharp. And yet, during their first meeting, he didn't try to woo her, didn't pretend to be someone he wasn't. He just laid it out, businesslike. He needed a wife, for a year, maybe two. It was a legal obligation tied to a clause in his late father's will, something about control of shares in the company shifting if he wasn't married by a certain date. There was money involved, of course. Enough to pay off Ava's debts 10 times over. Enough to give her father the care he needed. But he made it very clear, it wouldn't be a marriage. It would be a performance. A role she would have to play, convincingly, until the time was right. Ava didn't say yes that night. She walked away, confused and angry, feeling like she was being bought. But as her father's condition worsened, the medical bills doubled, and every call from the hospital became more urgent. The choice became clear. A few weeks later, she signed the agreement, numb, exhausted, and telling herself it was temporary. A transaction. Nothing more. But you and I both know, when the heart gets involved, nothing stays clean for long. Living with Damien wasn't like the movies. There were no passionate arguments leading to impulsive kisses, no accidental touches that sparked electricity. Not at first. The mansion was too quiet, the rooms too big, and Damien's schedule too tightly controlled. He barely spoke to her unless necessary. When they went out, it was hand in hand for the cameras, rehearsed smiles, photo ops at charity galas. Then back to silence. But every now and then, cracks began to show. Once, she found him staring at her old journal in the guest room, though he pretended not to be. Another time, he almost touched her hand in the elevator, hesitated, then pulled away like her skin was fire. And sometimes, late at night, she'd hear his voice on the phone, low and tense, mentioning her name in tones that didn't quite sound like hate. Ava started to wonder, why her? Why not one of the socialites already orbiting his world, women who would have sold their soul for the Wolf name? Why pick a girl drowning in debt, one with no connections, no media training, no family ties? She began to dig, quietly, between rehearsed dates and cold dinners. That's when things started to get strange. She noticed files disappearing from the home office. Not her files, but legal ones marked with initials she didn't recognize. The household staff grew nervous around her, pausing conversations when she walked in. And then there were the gifts, anonymous packages arriving at the mansion gate. Some harmless, like rare books with no sender listed. Others, More disturbing, like a vintage mirror engraved with a phrase she hadn't heard since childhood. "We always keep our promises, Ava." It sent a chill through her bones. That phrase, her mother used to say it, but in a different tone, almost as a warning. The deeper she looked, the more she found herself circling names she didn't recognize. An old business partner of Damien's who vanished from the public eye. A former fiancé who canceled the wedding weeks before the date and never spoke about it again. A charity organization Damien publicly funded but was later accused of laundering money. And through all of it, one thing kept surfacing. Every woman who got too close to Damien either disappeared, backed away in silence, or lost something they couldn't explain. And yet, through all that, Ava couldn't help but feel drawn to him. There were moments, brief, quiet, human moments, when his coldness cracked. The way his voice softened when he said her name during one of their fake interviews. The way he stayed up all night by her father's hospital bed, even when he said it was just for show. But there was always something off. Something just beneath the surface that didn't match the Damien Wolf the tabloids adored. A darkness that whispered there was more to this contract than a simple legal loophole. As she continued digging, one name came up again and again, Elias North. A former Wolf Industries board member, known for being ousted just weeks before Damien's marriage deadline was made public. A man who had sued the company, then dropped the case without explanation. A man who had, reportedly, once dated Damien's mother. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But Ava had a feeling this Elias knew why she was chosen. Why Damien was unraveling slowly in front of her, and what the contract was really meant to cover. But before she could reach out, Elias vanished. No trace. No digital footprint. The phone number she found online now belonged to a bakery in Vermont. And then, just 3 days ago, Ava found something. Hidden behind one of Damien's old books, a photograph. It wasn't of him. It was of her. At age 12, standing beside her mother, taken at a fair she barely remembered. On the back, in faint ink, were the words, "We planned this long ago." The Fairytale? It's starting to crack. And Ava is beginning to realize she didn't enter this world by accident. And that clause missing from the contract? It's not just a loophole. It's a trap. Ava didn't sleep that night. The photo she found wouldn't stop burning through her thoughts. How was it even possible? The edges were curled with age, the ink faded, but the image was unmistakably real. Her younger self, her mother's hand resting gently on her shoulder, the striped red and white tent from the county fair where they went just once, a lifetime ago. But they hadn't taken any photos that day. She remembered because her mom said they didn't have money for the souvenir print. And yet here it was, tucked behind a book Damien clearly hadn't touched in years. Ava stared at the photo until the sunrise painted gold across the mansion floor, but no answers came. Only more questions, and a sinking feeling that she was no longer playing a role in someone else's game, but walking straight into a past someone had worked very hard to erase. Later that morning, when she finally mustered the courage to confront Damien about it, he was already gone. Not at the office, not on a trip, just unavailable, according to the assistant who never looked her in the eyes anymore. Even stranger, the book that had hidden the photo, it was gone too. Not misplaced, not moved, completely vanished from the library shelves, like it had never existed. Ava checked the security cameras in the West Wing, only to find corrupted footage. Hours of glitchy, flickering black where images should have been. She knew this house had private surveillance Damien didn't share with her, but she had access to the basic logs. And those logs had been wiped clean between 1 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., exactly when she'd fallen asleep clutching the photograph. Someone had been in the room. Someone had taken it. Someone knew she was getting too close. That same evening, a car followed her. Black, with tinted windows. She noticed it after visiting the hospital to check on her father, now moved to a private care unit courtesy of Damien's money. It didn't make any threatening moves, but every time she crossed the street, every time she paused, the car paused too. She made 4 turns through different blocks just to test if it was real. It was. When she ducked into a cafe and peeked through the curtains, it was parked across the street, lights off, engine running. She called the police, but by the time they arrived, the car was gone. No plate, no footage from street cameras, just silence and a growing unease inside her chest. And then came the warning. A letter this time, handwritten in shaky script, folded neatly and slipped under her bedroom door. No name, no envelope, just a single sentence. Stop looking, or you'll find what they buried her for. At first, Ava didn't understand. Who was they? Buried who? But deep down, she knew. Her mother. The one person she hadn't thought about in years, mostly because it hurt too much. She'd died in a car crash when Ava was just 14, or at least that's what the report had said. But the details were always vague, no real autopsy disclosed, no driver of the other vehicle ever found. Ava had been told to move on, to grieve and forget, and she had, until now. Ava started piecing things together with a different lens. Her mother used to work at a private legal firm in Manhattan, the same firm that handled the Wolf family trusts. And just before the crash, she'd been anxious, guarded, constantly whispering into the phone in a locked bathroom, thinking Ava couldn't hear. There was one name Ava remembered her saying again and again, Jonathan. She thought maybe it was a friend or co-worker. But now, as Ava scoured old articles and internal Wolf documents, she found him, Jonathan Hale, a retired corporate attorney who'd served as Damien's father's legal counsel for 2 decades. He had vanished from public life around the same year Ava's mother died. No interviews, no obituary, no trace. And just as Ava began to think she was finally getting somewhere, she met Harper. Harper Bennett was introduced to her by coincidence, or so it seemed. A soft-spoken investigative journalist who claimed she was writing a story on Wolf Industries for an independent outlet. Someone who said she'd been following Damien for years. She approached Ava at an event, claimed she had been watching how things were unfolding, and offered to help. Said she believed Ava was more than just a pawn in this game. She even had old files, documents that Ava had never seen before, including an internal memo about a failed merger and a suspicious non-disclosure agreement signed by Damien's previous assistant, who allegedly left the country overnight without even collecting her final paycheck. It all seemed useful. Convenient, even, but something didn't sit right. For one, Harper always knew more than she should. Timelines, events, private moments Ava never made public. And she deflected every time Ava asked how she got her information. Her eyes were kind, but her questions were surgical. And then, 2 nights ago, Ava spotted Harper leaving the Wolf building after hours, wearing a staff badge. Harper hadn't said she was working inside the company. In fact, she had implied the opposite. Ava confronted her the next morning, but Harper brushed it off, saying she had sources everywhere. The excuse was smooth. Too smooth. Ava began to wonder if Harper was feeding her just enough truth to keep her off the real trail. Was she being used to discredit Damien, or protect him? Just when she thought it couldn't get more tangled, Ava received an email with no sender name. Just a video attachment and a single sentence typed in the subject line, "This is why she died." Her hand shook as she pressed play. The video was grainy and timestamped almost 15 years ago. It showed a room, bare, corporate, sterile, with 3 men and 1 woman sitting around a table. The woman was her mother. She looked afraid. The men were blurred, but one voice, distorted as it was, sounded eerily like Damien's father. The conversation was muffled but intense. The final words in the clip before it cut out were her mother's voice, saying, "If you force me to sign this, they'll find out what you did to the girl." The girl? It couldn't be her. Could it? Ava's stomach turned as she rewound it again and again, trying to hear more. But the video was corrupted after that sentence. It ended in static. She tried to download it, but the file deleted itself from her system within seconds, vanished like it had never existed. She doesn't know who sent the video. She doesn't know what exactly it means. But she does know one thing. Her mother didn't just die in that car crash. And whatever Damien's family was hiding, it didn't start with Ava. It started before she was even born. And now, someone's making sure she never uncovers the full truth. Because the next morning, Ava woke up with a single red rose on her pillow and a note in the same shaky handwriting. "You weren't supposed to survive." The rose on Ava's pillow haunted her, but it was a note that unraveled something deeper, a crack in her confidence, in the fragile illusion of safety she thought she'd maintained. She kept trying to rationalize it, telling herself maybe it was Damien, maybe it was a twisted romantic gesture meant to reignite their increasingly cold relationship. But she knew it wasn't. Damien hadn't spoken to her in days, and when he did, it was clipped and vague, like he was choosing every word with the precision of someone being watched. Ava didn't tell anyone about the note. She simply folded it and placed it in the bottom of a jewelry box, beneath the earring she hadn't worn since her engagement party. But she didn't sleep the next night, or the night after that, because the weight of the words, "you weren't supposed to survive," wasn't a threat. It felt like a fact, like her existence was a glitch in someone's plan. Just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, she got a call from Ryan. Ryan Monroe, her college ex, someone she hadn't seen in years, someone she once imagined a future with before life spiraled. He sounded breathless, nervous, like someone watching the shadows move on their walls. He said he didn't want to talk over the phone and begged her to meet him in person. They agreed to meet at a small diner on the edge of the city, a place they used to go before everything changed. When she got there, he looked thinner, paler, like the kind of man who had been waiting for a moment to speak his truth and had finally run out of time. Ryan pulled a small flash drive from his coat pocket and slid it across the table without saying a word. Ava stared at it, confused, until he finally said something that nearly made her heart stop. "I think I found something about your mother, and you're not the only one getting messages." Then he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo, an identical red rose, resting on his windowsill back in D.C., with a note that read, "Too close again. Stay quiet." He didn't know who sent it. He thought it might have been someone from his law firm. But the weirdest part? He hadn't spoken to Ava in 6 years. Why now? Why him? The flash drive held security footage. At first, it looked random: street cameras and elevator lobbies from various buildings across the city. But as Ava scrolled through the files, she realized the locations all had one thing in common. There were places she had recently visited. Cafes. The care center where her father now stayed. Even the entrance to Damien's corporate office. Someone had been watching her for weeks, possibly months. Ryan said a stranger in a gray suit left the drive at his desk anonymously. No note, no return address. The label on the USB just said, "Watch her? They are." Ryan had no clue what it meant, but he didn't want to be involved anymore. He looked like a man who had already decided he'd seen too much. Ava's blood ran cold. If someone was tracking her movements as thoroughly, then every conversation, every discovery, every moment of doubt, none of it had been private. But then something else caught her eye. One of the street cam clips showed a man stepping out of a black car, the same one that had followed her weeks ago. He looked older, clean-cut, confident. But then the frame paused, glitched, and resumed, just long enough to show him slipping something beneath the front doormat of her father's care center. The next morning, Ava went to the facility and lied her way into the restricted storage room behind the lobby. She lifted the mat with trembling fingers and found what the man had left, a small, worn key inside a plastic evidence bag. It had the number 112 etched crudely on it. She didn't recognize it, but something about the key gave her an instant feeling of dread. When she showed it to Harper later that day, hoping maybe she'd seen something similar in her research, Harper's reaction was alarmingly subtle. Her eyes flickered for just a moment, and then she shrugged, too casually, saying, "Probably nothing. A storage locker, maybe." But Ava knew that look. It was the look of someone who knew more than they were saying. And the more she thought about it, the more she started realizing something terrifying. What if Harper hadn't been sent to help her at all? What if she was a plant? Someone paid to drip-feed truth while steering her away from the real story? What if everyone she confided in was somehow part of this? Just as that paranoia was beginning to sink its claws deeper into her, another twist shattered everything she thought she knew. She received an anonymous text with a single photo, her mother again, this time standing outside an unfamiliar building. But the timestamp was dated just 3 years ago. 3 years. Her mother had supposedly died 14 years ago in a confirmed crash with a closed casket funeral and a death certificate filed by the city. Ava had lived through the grief, the disbelief, the unbearable silence. But if this image was real, if this wasn't some elaborate fake, then nothing about her mother's death was what she had been told. She tried running facial recognition, even used one of Damien's biometric software tools she'd once seen him demo at a tech event. The result was a 98% match. The woman in the photo wasn't just someone who looked like her mother. It was her. Alive. Hidden. possibly still out there. And then a final blow, one she didn't expect at all. That night, as she was preparing to leave Damien's estate once and for all, a letter slid under her door. This one wasn't typed or scrawled in shaky handwriting. It was clean, elegant, written in familiar script. The same script she remembered from birthday cards and school notes in her lunchbox as a kid. The letter was short, just a few lines. Ava, I never meant for you to get dragged into this. If you love him, walk away. If you want the truth, follow the key. But once you open that door, you can never come back. Mom. Ava dropped to the floor, knees shaking, mind spinning. The key in the evidence bag. The building number 112. The mother she thought was long gone. Everything she believed, everything she trusted, was unraveling at once. And what haunted her most wasn't the mystery itself. It was a chilling realization that every step she had taken, every clue she had uncovered, someone had laid them out for her like breadcrumbs. Someone wanted her to find them. But the question remained, why now? And why her? And just as she clutched the key tight in her hand, her phone buzzed again. Another message. No words. Just a live feed video showing the inside of a small storage unit. The drive to the storage unit was nearly silent, except for the distant hum of tires on asphalt and the erratic beat of Ava's heart in her ears. She couldn't tell if the cold in her chest was fear or fury or some blend of both, but her hands trembled around the steering wheel the entire way. Everything she thought she knew had been torn open in the last 48 hours. Her mother might still be alive. Someone was watching her every move. And now she was walking into a place that may hold the answer to a past everyone else insisted was buried. She pulled into the desolate storage facility just as the sky began to turn a dull gray, the kind of color that bleeds into a storm without warning. Unit 112 sat near the far end, partially shadowed by a leaning fence and a flickering overhead light. As she approached, the door was already halfway open, just like in the video. It creaked slightly, as though something, or someone, had left in a rush. Ava pushed it open fully and froze. The room was empty, but not just empty in the way storage spaces normally are. Empty like someone had cleared it in a panic. A few indentations in the dust-covered concrete suggested boxes had once sat there, maybe a trunk or two, but now it was bare, except for a single photograph taped to the far wall. Ava stepped closer, heart pounding, stomach tight. The photo was grainy, printed on glossy paper like it had come from an old instant camera. It was a picture of Ava, standing in the park 2 weeks ago, feeding birds, wearing the same coat she'd since thrown away. The camera angle suggested it had been taken from above, maybe from a tree or a drone. But that wasn't the worst part. Scrawled beneath the photo in black marker was one chilling sentence. You're looking in the wrong direction. She staggered back, suddenly lightheaded. Her mind spun with questions. What direction? Wrong how? Was this a warning or a trap? She didn't have time to consider it for long. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message. It was a live call. The screen flashed unknown caller. An instinct told her not to answer, but curiosity and fear had stronger hands now. She picked up slowly and didn't say a word. The voice on the other end was distorted, as if fed through a voice changer, low and mechanical. Leave the city tonight. Don't look for her. You have 24 hours before it's no longer a choice. Then the line went dead. Ava stood there, phone still to her ear, fingers stiff with cold or adrenaline. It was hard to tell anymore. That was the first direct threat. Not a passive-aggressive note. Not a vague warning left in someone else's mailbox. This was someone telling her they were watching, and if she didn't back off, they would make her disappear, too. She ran back to her car, her eyes darting across the parking lot, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow, every passing vehicle. She no longer felt like the hunter in this story. She was now prey. But before she could even start the engine, her phone rang again, this time from a known contact. Harper. Ava snatched it up, needing answers, needing to tell someone she trusted, or thought she trusted, what just happened. But the voice on the line wasn't Harper's. It was a man, panicked, rambling. Is this Ava? You don't know me. I'm Harper's neighbor. Something's wrong. Her door was wide open when I got home, and the place is trashed. She's not here. Her phone's still on the counter. I think someone took her. The line cut off with a static buzz. Ava sat in silence, heart shattering into 1,000 thoughts at once. Harper was gone, disappeared, just like her mother, just like the evidence, just like all the people who got too close. The reality hit her like a brick wall. No one was safe. And now Ava didn't know if Harper had been taken for helping her, or because she had betrayed her. That night, Ava didn't go home. She didn't go to Damien's penthouse, or to her father's care facility. She drove out to the coast, where the crashing of waves and the static of the wind felt like the only sounds that didn't lie. She parked her car off a narrow cliffside road and wrapped herself in the oversized sweater from a trunk, the one her mother had given her before the accident, the same one she hadn't been able to throw away. It still smelled faintly of lavender and old books. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she cried. Not a quiet, cinematic tear down the cheek, but a full-body, silent quake of emotion. Anger, betrayal, helplessness, a longing for someone, anyone, to tell her what was real. The world had twisted around her in slow, calculated degrees. First a fake marriage, then coded messages, then lost faces and impossible photos. And now Harper, her last link to any kind of direction, was gone. Ava's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She didn't know who to trust, what to believe, or where to go next. The darkness didn't feel metaphorical anymore. It was literal, surrounding her on all sides. And as she stared into the night, the crashing sea below mocking her silence, she finally understood what it felt like to vanish, long before you were ever physically gone. But she wasn't ready to disappear. She wasn't going to run. Not yet, because something inside her had shifted. This wasn't just about a billionaire's secrets anymore, or a fake relationship signed in gold and silence. This was about legacy, about lies passed down like inheritance, about the quiet, terrifying truth that her whole life had been a script someone else wrote, and they were furious that she'd started reading the margins. Still, that final photo in the storage unit haunted her, the caption warning she was looking in the wrong direction. But what if that meant the person she trusted most wasn't behind her? What if they'd been standing right in front of her the entire time? The next morning, Ava woke up to the sharp sting of light cutting through the windshield and the distant sound of seagulls cackling over the tide. Her neck ached from sleeping in the car, her body stiff and her mind still tangled in the fear from the night before. The coastal air did little to calm the storm still raging inside her, but as she scrolled through her phone hoping for a message, any message, from Harper or someone who could make sense of this chaos, she noticed something strange. An unread email had slipped into her inbox at 3:17 a.m., marked as urgent from a sender named Langdon Trust Office. At first glance, it looked like spam, but when she opened it, her pulse faltered. It wasn't spam. It was a scanned copy of a legal document, dated 6 months ago. It detailed the transfer of a significant inheritance, one that was never supposed to exist. Not for her, not unless someone had died. But there it was. Ava Lockwood, primary beneficiary. It had Damien's signature. Only, he was very much alive. The signature had been witnessed by someone named Claire Rowe, a name Ava hadn't heard in over 15 years. Claire had once worked as a mother's personal assistant before vanishing without a trace after the accident. Her name had never surfaced in the media, never appeared in funeral records, never turned up in any investigation Ava tried to follow when she turned 18. It was as if she'd been scrubbed from existence. And yet, here she was again, quietly endorsing a document that suggested Damien Lockwood had already started moving assets into Ava's name. But why? And more importantly, how? With the kind of determination that only comes from knowing you've been played, Ava drove straight back to the city. She didn't call anyone. She didn't return to the penthouse. Instead, she headed to the Langdon Trust Building, an old, private estate converted into a financial services firm that catered exclusively to elite families and legacy clients. The kind of place that didn't advertise, didn't list employees online, and didn't offer public walk-ins. But Ava wasn't asking anymore. She was demanding. And that's when the twist struck like a slap across her face. After an hour of stonewalling, a nervous assistant finally whispered that Claire Rowe was still there, working quietly under a different name, handling only special clients. It took threats, name-dropping, and finally showing the email to get her to agree to meet. When Claire finally appeared in the lobby, Ava barely recognized her. Time had dulled her features, but there was something about her eyes, furtive, calculating, and strangely familiar, that made Ava's stomach drop. Claire didn't waste time with pleasantries. She ushered Ava into a small room, shut the door behind her, and spoke as if every second might be her last. "You were never supposed to see that file," Claire said flatly. "It was part of the arrangement." "What arrangement?" Ava asked, every nerve in her body now on high alert. Claire exhaled slowly, her voice tight and brittle. "Your mother didn't die in that crash. She made a deal. A trade, really. Her life for yours. She vanished because if she hadn't, you would have been taken." Ava's knees buckled slightly. "What are you talking about? Taken by who?" "The Foundation," Claire whispered. "The same people who built your marriage contract. The same people who own half the city's billionaires. Damien was working with them. So was your father. So was I. But your mother, she went rogue. She knew too much, tried to leave, and when she realized they'd come for you, she offered herself instead." Ava could barely breathe. "But the marriage, Damien, all of this, was it fake? Was I just a pawn?" Claire gave a sad, bitter smile. "No, that part wasn't fake. He fell for you, and that ruined everything." Suddenly, the pieces began to rearrange themselves in Ava's mind. All the secrecy, the staged affection that turned real, the way Damien had tried to warn her without fully explaining anything, the unsigned documents, the half-truths, the look in his eyes that night on the balcony when he said, "Some promises are made in chains, others in blood." She thought it was romantic. Now it felt like a riddle. "You need to leave," Claire said abruptly, glancing over her shoulder as if someone might be listening. "They know you're asking questions. Harper wasn't taken because of what she knew. She was taken because she figured out what Damien didn't tell you. That this whole thing, the inheritance, the fake marriage, even your mother's so-called death, it was all engineered to bring you back into the fold. You were never supposed to run. You were supposed to take your place." "My place where?" Ava asked, her voice hoarse. Claire didn't answer. She just reached into her bag and handed Ava a black envelope. It was old, sealed with wax, and bore the Lockwood crest, the same one carved into Damien's family ring. Inside was a single photograph. This time, it wasn't of Ava. It was her mother, standing beside a younger Damien, smiling, holding a baby. The wind howled against the empty windows of the estate as Ava stood beneath the arched doorway of the old Lockwood villa, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the creak of the floorboards beneath her boots. Every room she had passed had been stripped of anything personal, like someone had tried to erase a legacy. No photographs, no papers, just dust and silence. But she knew he was here. Damien had left her a message, one that didn't come through words, but through absence. His disappearance from the city, the dead silence from his phone, and a handwritten note folded inside that black envelope Claire had given her. 4 words. "Come home. We finished this." The place reeked of secrets and old money, everything Ava had learned to distrust. She passed through the grand hallway lined with cracked marble columns and entered the library, where Damien stood alone in the center, firelight flickering across his face. He looked thinner, more haunted, the weight of years pressing down on his shoulders. But his eyes, those unreadable, stormy eyes, still held hers the same way they had the night they met. Only now, there was no pretense, no contract, no illusions, just truth, and it burned like acid in the air between them. "You found Claire," he said quietly, almost like an admission. "She showed me everything," Ava replied, her voice tight with fury. "The contract, the inheritance, the surveillance, my mother, and Serafina." Damien flinched, a ghost of a name, but it hit like a bullet. "You weren't supposed to know," he said. "Not yet." Ava took a slow step forward, eyes narrowing. "You were going to let me marry you under a lie. You were going to make me take the Lockwood name, wear the ring, and inherit everything while hiding your first daughter from the world. Why? Why me? Why fake a relationship, a marriage, a future?" Damien walked to the fireplace, gripping the mantle like it was the only thing anchoring him to the ground. "Because Serafina wasn't meant to survive. She was a result of something I did, something I was forced to do. Your mother knew. She knew everything. She took you and ran. She faked her death to keep you out of this world. The foundation only needed one Lockwood to sign the contract with their blood. They were going to take Serafina. Ava's blood ran cold. And you let them. I tried to stop them, he said, turning around now, voice shaking. But I was young, Ava, controlled. I didn't even know the full truth until it was too late. They kept Serafina locked away, hidden, raised in isolation to become their puppet. But then you came back into my life. You were never supposed to be part of it again. But when I saw you, God help me, I wanted to protect you. So I signed a marriage contract. That was my only leverage. Ava's chest tightened. So the marriage was to save me. Again. Damien nodded. It was the only way I could shield you from them. They needed you to sign over your name, your bloodline, your future. But if I married you under a legally binding contract that didn't disclose your full inheritance, I could delay them, stall, until I found Serafina, until I found a way out. Ava shook her head, her world unraveling all over again. You should have told me. I couldn't. They were watching. Every room, every device, even Harper's home was bugged. She found a back door. That's why they took her. Claire was the only one left who remembered your mother's plan. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. Not Damien's, not Ava's. Heavy, deliberate. Ava instinctively turned as the library doors opened, and a tall man entered, bald, with sharp features and a scar running down his neck. He wore a black coat and no expression. Mr. Lockwood, he said in a voice like gravel, the time has come. The heir must choose. Sign the foundation seal, or the girl in the basement dies. Ava's breath caught. Serafina. The man smiled, thin and cold. She's awake, confused, but alive, for now. Damien stepped between them. This wasn't the agreement. You said if I brought Ava in. She was supposed to comply, not resist. You failed. Without thinking, Ava lunged, not away, but toward the man. She grabbed a poker from the fireplace and swung. He dodged, barely, but she connected just enough to send him stumbling backward. Damien grabbed her arm. There's no time. If they kill Serafina, then we make sure they don't. They raced down the spiral staircase hidden behind the bookcase, a path Damien had unlocked with a pressure point Ava never would have seen. The corridor was lit with flickering bulbs, the walls echoing with the sound of distant sobs. The farther they descended, the colder it became, like the very bones of the house were mourning. They reached the vault. Steel door, retina scanner. Damien placed his eye against the panel. It beeped once. Then, with a hiss of pressurized air, the door opened. Inside, chained to a hospital bed, surrounded by blinking machines, was Serafina. Pale, fragile, but unmistakably Ava's mirror. The resemblance was uncanny, like staring into a distorted version of her past. She looked up, eyes wide with fear. Who are you? Ava rushed to her, unchaining one wrist as Damien disabled the monitors. I'm your sister, she whispered, and we're getting out. But just as the last lock clicked open, a new sound filled the chamber, a soft, ticking hum, growing louder. Damien turned pale. They rigged the vault. If she leaves, the whole place goes. No, Ava said, yanking Serafina to her feet. We're not playing by their rules anymore. She handed Damien the black envelope Claire had given her. Inside was more than the photo. It was a final clause in the original contract, a clause Ava had overlooked until that morning. It named not just Ava as beneficiary, but Serafina. In the event of both girls surviving, the Foundation's claim would void. All they had to do was survive together. Damien scanned the paper, eyes widening. This is it. This is what they were hiding. Then let's burn the rest, Ava said, leading them both out as the countdown ticked louder. They reached the main floor just as the first tremor hit. Glass shattered. Dust rained down. But they kept running. Out the door. Through the gates. Into the dawn light as the entire Lockwood estate exploded behind them in a blaze of fire and stone. Sirens wailed in the distance. Emergency lights flickered. But Ava didn't look back. Not until Damien collapsed beside her and whispered, I never wanted to lie, but I had to choose who to save. Ava nodded, cradling Serafina. Now we save each other." And just when the tension seemed to finally settle, Serafina spoke. "I've seen that man before," she said, pointing to a nearby ambulance where a paramedic adjusted his cap. Ava squinted. It wasn't the paramedic. It was the same man who had threatened them in the library. Smiling, weeks passed, and the scorched remains of the Lockwood estate were finally roped off, silenced by investigators who whispered of structural failures and ancient wiring, a convenient lie the public swallowed without question. But those who knew the truth, those who had lived it, carried the scars far beneath the surface. Ava had relocated to the coast, a quiet rental home tucked along a rocky stretch of Oregon shoreline where the fog blanketed the mornings and the sea whispered secrets only the wounded could hear. Serafina slept in the room across the hall, often plagued by dreams she couldn't explain and memories that flickered in and out like dying embers. Every morning, Ava brewed 2 cups of coffee, one for herself and one left untouched on the table, a silent ritual for the sister she had just begun to know. Damien, after testifying anonymously through encrypted testimony, disappeared into witness protection, trading his tailored suits and high-rise life for obscurity somewhere far from the influence of the Foundation. The final piece of the Lockwood legacy had been burned, along with its heir. Yet even now, in the stillness of that coastal retreat, there were moments that made Ava question what was real and what had been orchestrated. Sometimes she'd wake to find her bedroom window open, though she knew she'd locked it. Or she'd see a black sedan idling down the street for a little too long, its driver face obscured by glare. And sometimes, in the mirror, she'd catch the faintest glimpse of something that looked like Claire's reflection behind her, though the woman had vanished the day the estate fell. Claire had never been officially found, and neither had Harper's body been recovered, despite the explosion. The news said no survivors had been pulled from the underground chambers, but Ava knew better. People like Harper didn't die without a goodbye. And Claire had always been 2 steps ahead of everyone, a woman built from secrets and survival. One late afternoon, as a storm rolled in and the sky turned the color of bruised lilac, a letter arrived in the mailbox. It had no return address and smelled faintly of smoke and old roses. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, sepia-toned, clearly taken in haste. It showed 2 women walking down a remote alley, heads low, one of them unmistakably Harper, the other with a posture that resembled Claire's. Scribbled on the back was a note in faint handwriting that sent chills up Ava's spine. They weren't the only ones. "Keep her close. You broke the contract, but not the cycle." The weight of those words settled deep, more unnerving than any threat, because it meant that the Foundation, or whatever had taken its place in the shadows, still existed. Ava had torn down a house, not the roots. The system that preyed on bloodlines and forged destinies in secret was older than Lockwood and more deeply entrenched than anyone wanted to admit. And maybe Serafina, with her fragmented memories and quiet instincts, was proof that the next chapter was already being written. But Serafina didn't answer. Instead, she pulled something from her pocket, an old brass key Ava had never seen before, ornate with a symbol Ava recognized instantly, the Lockwood crest, half-burned but still intact. "I didn't have this before," Serafina murmured. "It was under my pillow this morning." And just like that, the illusion of peace shattered, because someone had been in the house, someone who still had access, someone who wanted them to know it wasn't over. Ava took the key, holding it tightly as the first drops of rain fell around them. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to, because the Real story was just beginning. And Ava wasn't that baby. In that moment, the ground beneath her life cracked open. The mystery wasn't just about her mother's disappearance or fake marriage contract. The truth was far darker. Her mother and Damien had known each other long before Ava ever walked into his office. They had a past, one that included a child, a first daughter, someone Ava had never met, someone who might still be alive, someone who might be the real reason this entire house of lies was built in the first place. And just like that, everything Ava thought she knew about her identity, her family, and the man she may have fallen for was ripped away, piece by piece. Because now she had a name she couldn't forget. A name Claire whispered like a curse as she pushed Ava out the back door and vanished once more into shadows. Fine Serafina. And somewhere in the distance, in a locked room with no windows, a girl with Ava's eyes stared at a flickering screen.